When you want to store style sheets, images, or font, you usually use the assets folder. But with Nuxt, we got two directories that can handle these assets. These two directories are public and, of course, assets. Previously, we created an assets directory to put our main.scss, but I added two images there to show you how we can use assets to fetch our images. But first, let's have a quick look on the documentation and let's have an explanation on the difference between public and assets. The public directory content is served at the server root as is. The assets directory contains by convention every assets that you want the build tool, Vite or Webpack, to process. So what is the difference between public and assets? That's the main question here. Why do we got two different folders? And that's maybe why you are watching this video, because it's a bit confusing to have two different folders that we could use actually to store our images, font, or etc. etc. Let's start by explaining the assets directory. Let's have a look on the documentation. Nuxt uses Vite or Webpack to build and bundle your application. This is the tool that basically bundle your app. The main function of these build tools is to process JavaScript file, but they can be extended through plugin for Vite or loaders for Webpack to process other kind of assets like style sheet, font, or SVG. This step transforms the original file mainly for performance or caching purpose. So it is clear that the assets directory is processing an additional step to your style sheet, to your image, at the bundle actually. So here, this step is improving the performance of our files, and also it's working on caching. By convention, Nuxt uses the assets directory to store this file, but there is no auto scan functionality for this directory, and you can use any other name for it, which means that Nuxt is not watching at assets, it's just a fixed, a static repository there that is here just for the dev, and there is no auto scan functionality, so it means that Nuxt is not watching to it. So you can name it the name you want. Here basically it's assets. Let's take an example. Here I got my app running, and in assets I added two images. So what I can do is to go on my main page, which is index, all right? And here in index, what I could do is to import this image. So I can take this example down there, and I'm going to add it just after my Hello Nuxt, which we can actually put there, Hello Nuxt free. There we go. And I'm going to catch my image called one.jpg. I'm going to remove this alt, this useless alt. And there we go. And now I get back to my app. I got my image that is displayed. So this is the first way of displaying an image. And of course, after that, I could add some CSS to change the size. Let's try to display the second image also. There we go. I got my second image that is displayed there. All right, this is the first way. Another way, instead of always using this path, what we could do is to use an alias. So I'm going to get back on nuxt.config.js, and remember, I have created this alias previously. This was the whole way to resolve paths, because now we can use root dir and source dir with Nuxt. So I can remove this one, and I could put, for instance, assets, okay? And here I can type slash, and I can use root dir. There we go, here, root dir, and I can close it. So here there's a mistake. I can close it with assets. Now I did this. What I can do directly, instead of having the wave that I got here, I can use at. And at assets will play the exact same role as the wave and will retrieve for me directly in the assets folder the image. Of course, if I have a folder, I have to follow the path to this folder. And when I get back, it's also working. This is the second way of using the path, and of course it's very useful. Now let's talk about the public directory. we see that here I got a folder assets and one GPG file. If I want to access this image, what I could do is assets.gpg. But if I do that, of course I got a 404 because here Nuxt.js is not serving this folder. Remember, it says down there that Nuxt doesn't auto scan and doesn't take in order this folder into his build. All right. So basically, because it's processing actually, basically, if we want to have a public image with no process at all, because assets is processing, but public here is not processing, we can use the public folder. So here the public directory is used as a public server for static assets. All right, public server for static assets. So you're going to put the image into the public folder and it will stay as it is. There will be no compression, there will be no processing, nothing else, no resizing. It will stay as it is. The same for style sheet, the same for any other file that you will put in there. You can get a file in the public directory from your application code or from a browser by the root URL /. So let's try. Now I'm going to create a new folder at the root, which will be public. And I'm going to move my two images there into the public folder and I'm going to try to access it. Back in my app, I type the name of my image as a URL and there we go. I got my image available exactly like if I would take it from a server. And as you look at it, it's directly available into my URL, but there is no pre-processing of the image. This image will be available directly like this, and there will be no caching. So if I want to access this image, basically, what I can do is to directly use the /. So here, instead of having all of this, I can just put the / and here the 2. So I'm going to get back on the app, and there we go. / will look directly into the public folder, which is very useful if you want to fetch another file like this. You can use directly the public folder. But remember, public means that it's public. So it's available on the app all the time. So you got to be careful if you want to store files or elements that you don't want to share. Don't put it into the public folder, put them into the assets folder. By using SVG as icons, you might ask yourself how to do it with assets and public folder. Well, actually, the thing is that with SVG, you would have to use a plugin for Vite to load them. And there is one called Vite SVG Loader that helps you actually to import the SVG from, for instance, the public or assets folder and to render them directly like a component. So here you got this package that is available, and the only thing that you would need to do is to go on your vitconfig.js, and if you don't have it, you have to create it, and then you give the plugin a view or SVG loader. All right, so you can use a third-party plugin for Nuxt to load your SVG. However, you know that I like to give you the best tips to develop faster and efficiently in Vue.js. And if you want to, and especially Nuxt, and if you want to use SVG, my advice would be to go on icon.js.org. And the thing is that everything is a component in Vue.js. So basically, icons can be also components. So let me give you an example. We are going to catch an icon. So here I'm going to look at it, and you will see that what we can do can be very cool. So here, if I type bell, and let's say that I'm looking for a bell icon in SVG, basically, let's say that I'm going to take this one. You see that on this website, on icon.js.org, I can download SVG as components. And here we see that I got plenty other options. I can also do it in React, Svelte. I can download them directly. What I can do if I click here on component view, I can just come back, go on my component, and here I'm going to create a folder called icons. And in icons, I'm going to create a bell.view. and I'm going to copy paste, and directly I got my SVG that is appearing here. So let's say that now I want to catch, so I'm going to remove this image. I want to use my SVG icon, which is in my .view file. How can I do it? Exactly like I explained to you for the components listen. I can simply call icons bell. And here icons bell is going to call in the component folder icons and bell. Now it's done. Let's get back to our application. And there we go. We've got our SVG that appears this way. It's way faster than using plugins that we can add to our configuration. So this was my tips. When you want to use icons, go on icon.js.org and use them directly as components.